Why doesn't my husband talk to me anymore? Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night asking yourself, what happened to us? Not because your husband packed his bags, not because he told you he wanted a divorce, but because somewhere along the way, the conversations became shorter. The laughter wasn't as frequent. The long talks that once came so naturally seemed to disappear. And now you're asking yourself, why doesn't my husband talk to me anymore? If that's the question you've been carrying, I want you to know something before we go any further. You're not the first wife to ask it, and you probably won't be the last. Today, I don't want to give you a quick answer. I want us to slow down and understand what may be happening. Because I've learned something over 34 years of marriage and more than 40 years with the same man. Understanding often changes the way we respond. And sometimes the way we respond changes what happens next. When communication changes, our minds usually don't stay quiet. Our thoughts begin racing. We start trying to fill in the blanks. Maybe he doesn't love me anymore. Maybe he's tired of me. Maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe there's someone else. Have you noticed how quickly our minds can go to the worst possible conclusion? I've done it myself. There was a season in my marriage when all kinds of thoughts were running through my mind. By the time Jake walked through the front door, I already had questions waiting for him. He hadn't even had a chance to sit down. He hadn't taken off his shoes. Sometimes he hadn't even put his keys down. And I had already decided we needed to have a conversation. Looking back now, I realized I wasn't responding to what had actually happened that day. I was responding to everything I had been thinking about while he was gone. My thoughts had become louder than the facts. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe you spent the whole day replaying conversations, wondering why he said this, wondering why he didn't say that, wondering whether something had changed. Then the moment he came home, everything that had been building inside you came pouring out. I also remember another season. It seemed like everything Jake did irritated me. Little things suddenly became big things. The way he answered, the way he sat down, the way he left something on the counter. Things that probably wouldn't have bothered me before suddenly felt impossible to ignore. Then there was another season that was even harder for me to admit. I woke up with an attitude, and I carried that same attitude all day long. Nothing had happened that morning. Nothing dramatic had taken place, but somehow I had already decided I was going to be frustrated before the day even started. Back then, if you had asked me what the problem was, I probably would have pointed at Jake. It took time. and a lot of honest self-reflection before I asked myself a much harder question. Donna, what if you aren't seeing the whole picture? That question changed me because I started looking at myself just as honestly as I had been looking at him. I asked myself something that wasn't easy. If I came home to me every day, how would I feel? That question wasn't about blaming myself. It was about being honest with myself. Marriage became healthier for me when I stopped believing every problem started with the other person. Now, let me say something very important. I'm not saying every communication problem is the wife's fault. I'm not saying every husband is doing the best he can. And I'm certainly not saying wives should ignore hurtful behavior. I'm saying something much simpler. Sometimes we understand our marriages better when we're willing to examine our own hearts as carefully as we examine our spouses. Now, let's talk about the silence itself. One mistake we make is believing every quiet husband is quiet for the same reason. But people become quiet for many different reasons. Some men are carrying financial pressure they don't know how to explain. Some are overwhelmed at work. Some are exhausted. Some are grieving. Some are dealing with health concerns. Some grew up in homes where feelings were rarely talked about. Some are trying to solve problems before they speak. And yes, sometimes there really are deeper issues that need to be addressed honestly. The point is, you cannot respond wisely until you understand what may actually be happening. Assumptions often create arguments. Understanding often creates conversations. I also learned something else. Home should never become the place we dread walking into. The world is already hard enough. Marriage should be one place where two people can find rest, honesty, grace, and encouragement. That doesn't mean there won't be disagreements. There will. It doesn't mean there won't be hard conversations. There will. But our homes should become places where both husband and wife feel safe enough to tell the truth without feeling like they're walking into another battle. I've often said that a home should be a refuge, not a battlefield, a stronghold where two imperfect people continue learning how to love each other through every season. So, what may help if this is where you are today? First, slow down before assuming the worst. Second, choose a calm time to talk instead of beginning the conversation in the middle of frustration. Third, instead of saying, "You never talk to me anymore," try saying, "I miss feeling close to you. I'd really like us to spend some time talking because our relationship matters to me. Do you hear the difference? One sounds like an accusation. The other sounds like an invitation. Fourth, listen as much as you speak. Sometimes we're so busy preparing our response that we never truly hear what the other person is trying to say. Finally, pray for wisdom. Not simply that your husband will change, but that you'll know how to respond with wisdom, patience, and love. And I also want to say this. If your marriage involves abuse, repeated deception, addiction, or serious mental health concerns, those situations may require support from a qualified counselor, medical professional, pastor, or another trusted source of help. Some problems are bigger than one conversation, and seeking help can be a wise step. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one thought. Communication is about more than words. It's about connection. Sometimes two people stop talking because they've stopped feeling understood. Sometimes they've become tired. Sometimes they've become hurt. Sometimes they've simply forgotten how to reach each other. But I've seen something over the years. Many marriages that grew quiet found their voices again. Not overnight. Not because one conversation fixed everything, but because someone chose to stop assuming and started understanding. If today's lesson helped you, I hope you'll come back for our next conversation, because every Monday and Thursday, we're going to answer another real marriage question. My prayer is that every lesson helps you understand yourself, understand your spouse, and understand the season you're walking through a little better. And always remember, this is a season, not a sentence.